Hi everyone! Today I'd like to talk a little about the language socialization theory. According to Patricia Duff, language socialization is a process. It is a process by which people new to a community or culture obtain their communicative competence, membership, and legitimacy in the group in a gradual and ongoing manner. It is a process that is mediated by language, and the goal of the process is for the newcomers to master appropriate identities, stances, for example, epistemic or empathetic positions, as well as ideologies of the new community and culture. It is also a process mediated by other behaviors that are associated with the target community and its normative practices. With this process, novices are gradually able to fit into the new social and cultural environment as knowing and self-consistent individuals. Therefore, language socialization is a very social cultural process of humans. The origin of language socialization theory and studies is a firm belief of anthropological studies, where scholars think that language is a fundamental medium in children's development of social and cultural knowledge and sensibilities. Therefore, as novices in the community, children are in a constant process of being socialized into the community linguistically, behaviorally, and ideologically. The establishment of language socialization theory bridged the gap in anthropological studies. That is, the paucity of attention to the role of language in the process of a child's growth and becoming a member of the family and the community is being noticed, and researches concerning this respect were initiated ever since. Till this day, the two main goals of language socialization studies are to examine the social cultural environment of children's communicative practices and to understand how children and other newcomers in a community create various, flowing, and sometimes contradictory nets of meanings and unconscious behavior patterns. And further on, as both children and adults, novices and experts are involved in the process, which is not a one-way but rather a two-way path, language socialization is therefore a lifespan process. It starts when a person entering a community is recognized by the group and goes on in his or her journey of life and ceases to happen when the individual passes away. In terms of the agencies in language socialization and the dynamic relationship between them, there are three tenets elicited in the theory and studies. At the center is the tenet that newcomers' participation in the communicative practices is promoted by socially and culturally informed persons, the experts, artifacts and features of the existing environment of the new community, but not necessarily decided by these factors. That is to say, there is possibility that novices may create language, behavior, or ideology spontaneously or transcendentally based on their personal and previous knowledge, and the contact of this knowledge and the new knowledge of the target community. Second to the tenets is that novices may also socialize experts in the interactive situations with their creative and novel repertoire, behavior, and minds. And furtherly, when children and other types of newcomers become proficient communicators, they also become more skillful members in the target community. So, having said so much about language socialization, how does it actually happen? Let's have a closer look at the process. As a process of a newcomer becoming a recognized member of the community, it involves an accommodation to the members' ideologies about communicative resources, which includes how they can be used to acquire and display knowledge, express emotions, perform actions, constitute persons, and establish and maintain relationships. That is to say, each of the speech communities relevant to the novice socioculturally organizes the situational factors of the communication that surrounds him or her, who communicates what with whom, in which style, genre, and code. In this way, Newcomers come to understand the social and cultural meaning of these factors through their own and others' socially structured participation in these situations. For example, when a child is taken to see a doctor by his parents, the doctor would be asking the parents most of the questions about the child's condition. However, sometimes when the questions are directed to the child himself, he may still be able to answer certain questions competently. This means that the child is having some sense of the purpose of the medical visit, and the doctor's questions indirectly socialize the child patient into what constitutes medically relevant information. For example, presence, severity, duration of symptoms, and general health condition. And also, the questions have socialized him into what kind of response he or his parents are expected to make. This is a typical example of language socialization and the process. With respect to existing researches in the field, there are mainly two types of language socialization. One is first language literary socialization, which examines the socialization of a first language in scenarios of home and school education. And another is second language socialization that deals with children and adults who enter a new community and have to pick up the repertoire of linguistic, discursive, and cultural traditions and community affiliations in the new environment. As the focus of language socialization studies, second language socialization studies involves subjects and contexts of immigrant and international English language learners in schools and universities. Students learning languages other than English with a view to understanding how those languages encode affect pragmatics and grammatical and cultural meaning differently than students' first language. Socialization to hybrid peer norms in virtual communities such as chat rooms, as well as second language or bilingual academic or professional discourse socialization in higher education, where people must learn to speak, think, write, and feel like historians, physicists, lawyers, doctors, call center workers, etc. To sum up, language socialization research examines the semiotically mediated affordances of novices' engagement with culture throughout the life cycle. And a person who is an expert in one situation may be a novice in another situation. Once again, communicative practices involving novices are deeply social cultural. Like every other theory, language socialization is based on the reality and readily understandable for all language learners and users. Moreover, languages we speak are both means and outcomes of socialization. Thank you for your watching. If you have any questions about the presentation and source materials, please do not hesitate to contact me via the email address at the beginning of this video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.